Okay, we're going to start. Okay, hello everyone. So today, as our educational component of the practicum continues, we have Laurel Mazur here, who is our last year intern, and she's going to talk to you about experiential economics and opportunities that gave her to obtain a new job. So right now, therefore, to announce her was to say she is employee from next week of the Federal Reserve Bank of
Richmond.
Yes. So Laurel, please.
Awesome. I'll stand at this lovely little podium. I like podiums. All right. Well, thank you for coming. It's really nice to be back at AIER. I loved my internship last year, so it's a good environment to be in. So I thought pretty much what I'm talking about is, well, experiential economics. I thought that was a wonderful title. But pretty much my internship at AIER, my experience before and after that, and just sort of how everything shaped me and went together. It's a little bit interesting for me to be giving a talk about myself, but hopefully it's informative. So, as you know, my name is Laurel Mazur. I graduated from the University of Denver in 2009 with a bachelor's in international studies and economics, and then just this past June with a master's in global finance, trade, and economic integration, which is a really policy-oriented international economics program. And then, truth be told, I have not finished my economics master's because I still have to write my thesis. I will defend that in October, but that's going to be happening soon. Recently got a job with the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, start next week, so that's exciting. I will be a supervision, regulation, and credit research assistant in the risk and policy analysis unit. Pretty much, it'll be exciting. I get to assess financial models, work with economists. It's always been my dream to work with PhD economists, which is exactly what I did here at AIER, so I'm excited to continue that. Long term, I want to get my PhD in economics and work as more of a professional economist, doing kind of research that hopefully I'll be doing at the Federal Reserve and definitely what I did here. So I interned last year. I think it was the second intern session in July. Pretty much the way that I found it, I was just really interested in economic research. Actually went to Google and Googled economic research internships, and it thankfully popped up. Throughout my entire internship search, it was my first choice and sort of my dream internship, but I never thought I'd get it because I guess that's just how we act as humans. But fortunately it happened. Starting in July, I worked with Natalia for my project on foreign direct investment in Russia, whether or not that's an attractive option, looking at all the different details of that. It was an extremely interesting research project. The first time that I actually did research outside of the scope of academic papers, writing for a class, what's normal in school. So that really definitely helped me out a lot. Really enjoyed the outside speakers that we had. I think you guys are having, I guess that's a component of this year, which I think is a really good addition. Because really being able to learn from people who have been doing this work for a really long time, even for a short time, there was a lot of valuable experience that they had and a lot of information that they shared. And that was something I really appreciated. One of the things that I found in my interviewing, and really all of my experience, is the difference really between the academic research you're going to do in school and then the kind of research that you'll do here. So that's one of the main benefits that I found, is being able to have that professional experience at such a young age and working with people who are doing that kind of research, people who have PhDs in economics, which of course is the gold standard in economics. That was really, really helpful for me because it just added another depth of, I guess, complexity to my experience, which actually helped a lot later. As far as school, I finished my master's this past year, of course, and so I had a year after my internship to complete that. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is that I found that my discourse and my conversations with my professors actually improved after my internship because I sort of was able to relate to them, relate to the work that they do on a level that I wasn't able to beforehand. A lot of my professors came out of the academic setting for a time to work in more of a professional economic research capacity, and so it was really interesting to share those experiences. The other thing for me was being able to approach papers that I wrote with more of a professional real-world stance. There's a lot of emphasis on theory, a lot of literature reviews, and many, many pages that go into detailing economic theory, which is extremely beneficial and I really enjoy. But being able to sort of put more of the real-world component in there that not only somebody in academia would be interested in, but also somebody who's just interested in economics that affect their daily lives. That was really helpful and something that I think is really beneficial because when you get out, at least for me when I got out into the interviewing professional world, one of the main things that they're worried about is that you'll be too academic, which I never thought could ever be a bad thing, and still don't think it's a bad thing, but some people think that.
So I'm still a little bit confused about the last year. You went back to Denver?
Yes. Yes. I am originally from Denver. Yep. I'm a Colorado native. I moved out for the first time last week, so that's fun. But yeah, so that's where I am with that. As far as how the internship affected my job search, of course, I think that had a lot more of a bearing because AIER is a very recognized organization, as I found out when I went out to interview with different organizations. Mostly interviewed with the Federal Reserve, so I don't have like a wide sample of interviewing experiences, but a lot of different Fed branches, so that was really interesting. Again, it's an extremely applicable position to have. As somebody who wants to do research as a career, having this was way more valuable than a research assistant position at school or a research paper that I might have done or presented. This was really what people drew on the most in the interview experiences to try to ask if I could describe it, talk about it. There was a lot of interest in it, and I actually think it helped me get as far as I did in a lot of these. And then, yeah. I did.
Okay, so explain, why did you want to do Federal Reserve and...
Yeah, so again, yeah, the Federal Reserve was always my dream organization. And for me, the reason for that was because of the robustness of the research that they did. I was always interested in being in an academic research environment. I interviewed for a few more of the investment management was extremely interesting for me, but I wanted to do sort of more of the nitty-gritty economic research. So the Federal Reserve, for me, paired a job experience with the kind of research that can be done in a university. And so that's really what attracted me to the Federal Reserve. Also, just the type of research they do. I'm really interested in monetary macroeconomics. Topically, that's my focus. So, of course, what better place to work than a Fed branch? So,
So you wrote a paper with Natalia?
I did. I don't know if we ever.
That was on your resume
Yes.
already.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it was not
It didn't go anywhere, sadly, but it was really interesting.
No, it is, paper exists, and it's kind of in our own archives, like in my archives, my office.
Yeah.
But it didn't get published because, one of the reasons actually, because it was on Russia, and it seems that right now we're focusing on the American economic issues. So it kind of, when something pops up with like, oh, let's write about, actually, last year, of course, when Ukraine and Russia started to kind of bubble, we actually maybe thought to go back. Okay, we need to write something on Russia, and I was well, we have this kind of paper half written. So, but still, decision was made that it was not sufficiently developed yet to really publish, especially with relation to Ukrainian conflict. So, but and we also had another paper on.
I disagree. I need time.
Okay, well, you talk to the boss. But there was another also paper we wrote on China.
There's an Eastern European Econ Journal.
So maybe. So, but we can talk about it. But so anyway, the paper is here, and maybe we can pursue it forward. But
I'm only 6 hours away now.
So, but that was one reason why we kind of, interns did their work, and then we never, pushed it forward.
Yeah. I guess sort of.
There was another paper also with me. The other is intern on the session C or whatever. We compared now this FDI of Russia, FDI of China. And this paper actually was presented at a conference by that student later on. So, I mean, kind of, because we're talking about experiential economics and how it affects for you guys to get jobs and, you know, graded schools. So everything you do matters. And you do, even if it's not published, you can put it on the resume. And again, if they ever call, or I think for you also I wrote the recommendation. So you can vouch that, yeah, the paper is here, you can even show the paper because it's just not published. It's kind of working paper in a way. So you should, in this experience here, if you even come out with some written stuff that you can put in your portfolio, it's really helpful, even if it's not officially published.
Yeah.
Because it's a working paper.
It's on the website? It's on the website?
No, it's not on the website. Just talk to me. Talk to me.
Yeah.
It's on the S drive, though. It's on the S drive.
There you go. Yeah, and sort of, I guess, on that, one of the things that I found really beneficial for me was sort of that level of supervision, but also independent work. So that balance was really helpful because, of course, in the job world, which I'm sure some of you know, they're really interested in somebody who can sort of take direction, but can also take it on their own. So having that experience where you can say, I got the base guidelines for this paper, for this project, and then this is where I took it on my own, and, you know, continue that dialogue was really important and actually really helpful for me, because most of the other things I've done in school is, you know, your professor gives you a topic or a broad topic, you write a paper, you turn it in, and that's the end of it. Even if it's an extremely detailed paper, whatnot, it's still that sort of narrow experience of writing a paper in academia. So that was really, really helpful.
So then just to get on this also, remember guys, you all are working with a researcher. So that's one of the kind of skills, right? Experience of skills, how you navigate that relationship, how you take it independent stance on things, but then still you're following directions. So it's a very important skill in the professional world that you can show. Yeah, you know, like we were discussing, and then I took, this was my own thing, and this was my idea, I added to the paper. All of these things kind of keep in mind, because when you do interview, right, you can kind of showcase that as a, you know, benefit of your learning skill, right?
Yeah, exactly. And being able to have those specific examples and specific experiences, I think, is sort of a priceless thing in the interview process. Of course, all of my career people constantly harped on that, but being able to specifically say, when I was working on this project with this person, I did this, like, instead of just doing those broad-based interview questions. But this is an interview workshop, so I don't need to continue on that. As far as for me, of course, AIER was my dream internship, and afterwards it turned out to be as well, which isn't like, I was not paid to say that, so that's good. But it was, I mean, it was wonderful. Again, I am a little aspiring nerdy economist, and research is what I want to do, writing is what I want to do, presenting is one of my favorite things in the world, so it was extremely, extremely applicable for me. Some of the other interns, I actually talked to one of the girls I interned with last week. She's working for an investment company in Baltimore right now, so she's not doing the direct research experience, but of course it was still very valuable for her as well. So I think it's an internship that's extremely applicable. You've got the aspect of teamwork, individual work, like we were sort of talking about earlier, and those are just sort of general tenets that in the job world are just extremely necessary, something that you're going to have to deal with, experience, and being able to show that you've had that experience is great. As far as just like I threw in job search tips because I just finished that, so I thought it would be fun to put in. One of the things that I thought was so important for me in the internship search, but also in the job search, was just really being intentional about what you want to do and where you want to go. I have a lot of friends who, you know, have an event planning internship here and a research internship there, and just a lot of different pieces that are extremely valuable, sort of when called on to put them together in sort of one coherent experience, sort of job life story, that's sort of difficult, which that's not a good or bad thing. But in my experience, it was really helpful to realize, you know, I want to do research, so I'm applying to all these research jobs. The experiences that I'm going to seek out during my education are going to be research-oriented. Just last week, I presented at the Western Economic Association conference with a paper that I wrote as an independent study. Of course, it was extremely obvious that in my group of PhD people that also presented, I was younger and less experienced, but it was still a really good experience. Even if you don't think you're ready for something, not entirely prepared, there's really a lot of support. So there's a lot of support from my discussant that I worked with. We've been talking back and forth about improvements that I could make to the paper, and so that's also an option. And sort of going outside of the box to try to find those experiences that maybe your colleagues in school aren't really pursuing and may not be sort of mainstream, that's also extremely helpful. So being able to go out and do that. Also for me, and I brought this in, but sort of having a trend in your experience. So for me, it was all research. You could look at my resume for 5 seconds and realize that that's really what I wanted to do. And I think that's important, even if you have a lot of varied experiences, but trying to find the trend that goes through it. That also really helps. In the interview setting, even just networking at receptions, at conferences, wherever you're at, really being able to have that horribly cliched elevator speech prepared is really important. And then, let's see, I have a few other things. Yeah, the best thing that I have to say is just sort of to put yourself out there for a lot of different experiences. I don't know where any of you are from, but the American Economic Association conference, I believe, is in Boston this year. So if you're anywhere around here, it's quite accessible. So going to stuff like that, talking to people, I found at AIER more so than a lot of other places, but generally that economists, they want to help the generation under them and the people that want to sort of become, not them, but start doing what they're doing. So that was really helpful, and being able to make use of that as opposed to just sitting in my room looking at jobs on a computer turned out to be really, really helpful. And I sort of started that discourse in AIER and talking to the different economists and talking to people who were doing what I wanted to do. So in general, it was a really good experience. Of course, anything is what you make it, but I'm really excited for all of you who are just starting this experience. Didn't it just start on, June 30th or something? Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I have to say. I would love questions. Questions are wonderful. But other than that, thank you.
So did you apply to any PhD programs?
I didn't. No, I actually, starting in January, I'm going to go part-time for a bachelor's in math because I know. Yeah. That is awesome. We should chat. Yeah, my economics program at school didn't really focus on a lot of the quantitative aspects. There were some math classes, a lot of statistics classes, but I really need to beef that up a lot more. So I will be doing that soon, but giving myself 3 to 4 years, and then PhD programs are coming in the future.
Mm-hmm. What was your topic at WEA?
My topic was on the Taylor rule of monetary policy. I was trying to see if I could find any evidence for policy coordination between the Bank of England, the European Central Bank, and the Federal Reserve from 2002 to 2012, and really honing in on the divergences that I thought would occur once the crisis happened. As a conclusion, there was no evidence of policy coordination, but it was really interesting to see that the Bank of England and the ECB tracked a lot more with the prescribed estimated interest rates of the Taylor rule than the Federal Reserve. And a lot of research has come out in the, distant or recent past about how that, of course, could be attributed to the unconventional monetary policies. Also, Taylor rule prescribed negative interest rates during the crisis, which was really interesting. So a lot of cool conclusions I wasn't expecting.
So can we have your paper?
Sure, if you want it.
Because also Brad, isn't Brad here working on all these banks? So we would like to have your paper to just
Yeah,
mull it over.
I will send it
Mull
along.
over. Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
it was an interesting paper. I mean, compared when I got my comments, I realized I have a lot more work to do, but the foundations were wonderful.
Of course. Other questions? Come on, people. No more questions? Okay, so I have a question. So you said that conversation with professors in your school became more informative or more, so can you comment on that or elaborate?
Yeah. So mostly, at least in my 1-degree program, the Global Finance program, it's housed in a more professional school. So most of our professors have been in the workforce for 20, 30 years and then come and become professors. So there was a lot more discussion that came from me having more of like the outside in the world experience with the internship with AIER that I think that they sort of resonated with them a little bit more. So we were able to sort of talk. For me, it was just talking on a different level, like as opposed to just a research topic or just that, school experience. I was able to talk about my work experience, talk about an organization that they knew a lot about, and just sort of have that conversation. But also, I knew more of how research I guess, in the world worked. It's not like I had more credibility in their eyes because they're wonderful people regardless of who you are and what experiences you've had, but it was a lot more interesting being able to talk about the experience and also just more of an inroad for a conversation. Like sometimes it's awkward to go into office hours and just talk about a paper, whereas if you have an experience that you can sort of share or something that you can talk about beyond that, I don't know, it sort of broke down the barriers to some professor-student communication that can be intimidating.
You go first. It's a short one. Were you at an RA when you were in the master's program?
Yes. Yeah. This past year, I was an RA for 2 professors that were doing a project on bank consolidation in Europe and looking at the different structures of multinational banks and how they behave during the crisis. So sort of the idea of banks should cut and run in a crisis by theory and looking at the ones that didn't and seeing what their makeup and what their composition was to make that happen. My job was to look through a lot of annual reports, which was really fun. We looked at Santander and BBVA mostly. For me, they had a few research assistants, so it was really interesting to sort of look at their international composition of assets and profits over the years and then how that played into where they stayed and where they left after the crisis.
Besides going to conferences, what else would you suggest for like putting yourself out there and talking to people? What other opportunities are there?
Well, I mean, my main one was conferences, being able to go and do stuff like that. Also, I mean, and this is super small, but when people come to your school to like talk or whatever, I would always talk to my career people, whoever, organize that, and ask like, can we get a smaller meeting with students? Is there a time that maybe I can meet with them? I'd always try to bring other people in because there's nothing special about me that they'd want to talk to just me. But a smaller group of students was always good. Making sure to ask questions. I always tried to stray away from doing like the give business card to person after speech when there's like 20, 30 other people, but that's also helpful, sort of make that mark there. As far as the job search, I would reach out to people from the organization. A lot of times, LinkedIn has people from your university within that organization, and that's really helpful to talk to them, talk to people who might have experience there. It's like borderline stalking, but not really because it's LinkedIn, so it's okay. But yeah, mainly, I mean, again, you said besides conferences, but another conference story. The Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas was having a conference back in April, and I was attending that, and they posted a job a few days before the conference, so I was able to call them and be like, hey, I'm going to be in your area, so why don't we talk about that job? And, I was actually able to get an interview out of that, even without going through the application process or doing anything like that. Of course, it didn't come through, and that is totally fine, but it's always just good to have those experiences, and keeping in contact with people who have graduated, who have moved on. Keeping your AIER contacts is great. I still talk to people. It's nice. Yeah, just thinking outside of the box. And one of the main things that I did was sort of seeing opportunities, maybe thinking like, oh, I might, not be at the level for that, or that might not apply to me. But then really checking back with yourself and being like, that really could. I could go to that. I could talk to people. I could really do that. That was always really helpful. But yeah, I mean, just being somewhat unconventional, going out of your way to try to talk to people. That was nice. Yeah.
I have a question about your future jobs. So, what specifically would you do in this job? So,
First of all, tell us again the title of it, kind of long.
It is very long. Well, technically the title is the SRC Research Assistant, but that's not explanatory at all. So it's the Supervision, Regulation, and Credit Department. So what they do is look at banks. We have, I believe, Bank of America is one of the big ones, and another larger bank, and then a lot of smaller regional banks in District 5, which is Richmond. And so they will work with the examiners. One of the main things that the economists do is actually look at the proprietary models that the financial institutions have and try to assess if that is viable, if they're capturing the risks that they have. There's a lot of looking at the different risks with banking, a lot of the capital-based requirements, liquidity of different banks. One of the other things that they do, they're actually assigned to one of the parts of the stress test model that the Fed has, They did not tell me which one, but I assume next week I will find out. But as far as my actual job, it's very sort of up in the air as far as what I'll be doing. There's about 4 or 5 different economists that I'll be working with in Baltimore, and then we have another group of economists in Charlotte. And pretty much between the Federal Reserve work, but also their own research, the research assistants are assigned to whatever they need. So it might be learning to program in a new software program that they haven't worked with, or I haven't worked with, which will be really fun. To doing a literature review. One of the things that one of the guys told me to try to, I guess, make me think the job was boring was that I might be looking through like 60, 70 years of bank reports to look at trends, which actually sounds fun to me. So just a lot of different, any really assisting capacity. I've been told that a lot of times you can be like on 4 to 5 different projects at once, which sounds immensely stressful. But just different research things. A lot of times there will be a larger portion, maybe you'll write a column for something, and other times you're just doing software stuff behind the scenes. So I've heard it changes every day, and I'm looking forward to it.
Could you talk a little bit about how your interview went? So was it in person, and what questions did you have and how you answered?
Yeah, well, that interview actually came the week after I had a 10-hour interview, so I would say that my interview for my job was wonderful. It was about 2-3 hours long. One of the things, at least that the Fed does in their interviews, is you just get taken around to different people. So you have like 10, 15-minute interviews with each of the different economists, the research assistants who are working in the capacity that you're interviewing for, and a lot of Skype interviewing. So you'll be in the office, and then other people from other offices will be Skyping in, which was something that I had never really experienced before I interviewed with that sort of organization. So that was fun, because sometimes it's hard to understand people, and that's an awkward situation. But as far as questions, it was a lot of describing research that you've done, which is another thing that AIER really helped me with, is it gave me a nice little story snippet to tell people about my research experience. So they'll just ask to take, I was asked to take them through the process of the paper that I presented at the conference, who I worked with, what kind of resources I did or consulted, different sections of the paper, pretty much just all of that. They ask how you handle stress a lot. So that's a fun question. It's always nice to spin those questions in a positive way. So that's a good. Well, it's weird. I don't stress, but I'm sure my body feels real stressed. So then I just go get a massage afterwards, and that's good. I think it might have been. Probably not exactly that, but I had.
So what did you answer?
Well, pretty much. The way that I do it, I did 2 master's degrees, at least all the coursework for 2 master's degrees in 2 years. So I was taking 2 to 3 classes more than I was supposed to take every quarter of college. So I think that sort of helped with the how I handle stress, because I willingly and voluntarily put myself in that situation. Just talked about really making sure that I was in check with myself, making sure that it wasn't getting out of hand, and then really taking on those projects with everything that I could give them, and doing that. So I used more of the experiential example than like a prescription for how I handle stress. Yes, and then a massage afterwards. Yeah, but there was a lot of, I will say, at least for me, when I went to career classes at school, I got none of the questions that they go over. So what's your biggest strength, weakness, that kind of stuff never came up. So it was a lot of, how do you approach a research project? How would you do this in this given situation? They do give you software tests. With this particular position, you could decide between Stata, SAS, and MATLAB. Which was really nice, that they don't just throw you all of them and make you do it. Really actually pretty simple, but they just wanted to make sure that, when you say you have Stata on your resume, you actually do.
Hold on, tell us about pretty simple. So what, they give you some kind of problem to write in, or to do a correlation, or what is it they're asking you to do?
They asked to import a data set. It was on the relation between unemployment and different variables. So housing prices was one of them. I don't remember. GDP was another. They wanted you to make a correlation table to look at that, and then really just run a basic regression.
Basically, actually, they're checking if you can even approach that.
Yeah.
So it's a simple task, even to get the variable, to put them in some form correlation. But if you're lying about this, you'll not be able to do it.
Exactly. They don't make you do anything complicated because I think they realize that you're in an interview, so you're probably stressed anyway.
You were doing that on the spot there.
Yep. It was.
If you forgot something, for example, could you look it up?
Yep. Yeah, they let you look stuff up. It was really good. I will say their interview process for me was one of the, I'd say, at least best or easiest to get through because they handled it in a really real world setting. Like I've been in interviews where they give you this problem and you don't have any other resources. And it's like, when will I really be working like that? So it was nice to have Google and be able to look stuff up. But yeah, and really that one thing that I've realized is like striking the balance between sort of being casual and then being extremely professional in interviews, because a lot of times you'll be talking to the same people, you'll start getting really comfortable. So really being able to do that, but yeah, and now do that. But I think that was actually really helpful to sort of be able to talk on like more of a human level as opposed to being like an interview robot, which I think is helpful. It was good. It was good to get to know the people. Can't think of anything else. A lot of them asked why I wanted to move from Colorado, but I handled that well, so that's good. I hope that helped. That was all I could recall right now.
So, but again, so I think Ludmila was asking more about, so it's you come to the place and then usually you go around to chat with the team, right? And they kind of checking you out.
Yeah.
And then you do some kind of task.
Yep, pretty much. One of the things, most of the people will ask you the same exact questions. So remembering what you said to the first person when you're talking to the last person is good, so that they have that continuity that, you know, this is your experience. Not like that's really a problem because sometimes you can draw on a different research project in one of the questions. But yeah, generally they will take you around to different people.
Did you present some kind of in that forum like that or no?
No, not with this one. Actually, really not with anyone.
Also, they're bringing you up to see your, job market paper basically. Mm-hmm. So you do present first, and then you still walk around. So, but
Yeah.
master's level still, I guess you don't have officially kind of what to present.
Yeah, exactly.
So, very nice.
Yeah, it was good.
So, what is that elevator speech you're referring to?
Do you want me to give mine? No. Well. Pretty much from what I had as my elevator speech was just, who I am, my background, but not a ton of that. So like where I'm going to school, what my degree's in, but really having that strong statement of what you want to do. So what you're looking for. A lot of times I was told a few years back, you would put like a motivation on your resume, like I'm looking for this kind of job or wanting to do this kind of thing. And that's kind of what I incorporated into my elevator speech was I'm interested in economic research. My focus is macroeconomics, just sort of going into that, who you are, when you're going to graduate, little stuff like that. Just so that they have, it's like 30 seconds. So they have a snippet, who you are, what you're looking for. Try to add something unique in there so that they'll actually remember who you are.
Unique point.
I think I just really made myself sound super nerdy. I don't remember super nerdy. Yeah, I don't remember what my unique thing was. One of the things that I struggled with, what?
Flute playing.
Oh, I should.
Have you practiced?
Well, actually a month after the internship ended, I played a wedding. So that happened, and then I played, what? I played in a few ensembles last year. So I did have flute playing in there. But one of the things that I struggled with through a lot of the interviewing, job applications, elevator speech, was I sort of cultivated an extremely narrow research interest. So I did monetary policy research. Like that was my thing. So when I went to interviews that were doing, say, this one even, yeah, risk, banking, stuff like that, they would always tell me, just so you know, you're not going to be studying monetary policy. So you're not going to be doing what you've done. So for me, it was sort of, I guess, an instruction that it's good to be specific. So you're not like, I want to do economic research and have no idea what in economic research, but also being broad enough to sort of fit into different categories, which I know for PhD programs isn't really the same case because you are relatively specific and that's awesome. But at this level, I found that the specificity of like, this is exactly what I research isn't appropriate yet. So that's another thing, just random in there.
So what was your, something you did badly, say, in another interview, or so you regret saying something? Or?
Well, I was in another interview.
That was why they didn't take me, because blah, blah, blah.
Well, I was in one interview where they told me I was too academic, so that was fun. It was with an investment firm, and they were trying to hire research analysts, but more of like a read news articles, locate trends in news articles kind of research, which I've done before and I really like. One of the things I think, and everyone tells you this, and I should have known it, but like don't show your fatigue. This was the 10-hour interview. It started at 7:30, and at the very end, they started giving me memory tests. So they'd read a phone number, and they made me repeat it forwards and backwards.
No.
Yeah, it was weird. Just, yeah, yep. And I found that out later. Yeah, so memory tests, Excel tests, vocab tests, grammar, like all these different tests. And I think I just got to the point where I was like, this is kind of ridiculous. Of course, I never said that. But probably not putting my all into those tests because I thought they were, slightly tertiary to the actual position. But, let's see.
Which industry?
It was investment. Yep, investment stuff. Extremely, extremely rigorous. They asked me to send my SAT scores, like when I applied. I'm like, that was a few tests ago, but whatever. Let's see. But that one, I mean, for when I got the call that, they didn't hire me, they said they found a much better fit, which I honestly thought was extremely accurate. Like even when I left that interview, I'm like, this isn't for me. And if I can feel that, they can too, I'm sure. So, but the tests threw me off a bit. So be ready if you're, interviewing places that give you all sorts of fun tests.
So how many total places you interviewed, say? 10, 50?
I interviewed at 4 different places. So 3 Fed branches and 1 investment. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Go ahead.
Tell us more about the University of Denver. If I remember correctly, it's a small school, private.
Yep.
And so, I don't know what population of student is, but...
Yeah, University of Denver, again, small private school in Denver, Colorado. There's around 10,000 students, around 4,000 undergrads and 6,000 grad students. So it's, yeah, more grad students than undergrad. They have, the big thing at DU is the Joseph Corbell School of International Studies. It was founded by Madeleine Albright's father, Joseph Corbell. She went there, Condoleezza Rice went there, so we have some, notable alumni. It's consistently ranked 9th in the country and 11th in the world for international studies schools. So I went in to my bachelor's and my master's being primarily interested in international studies. So that's why I went to DU at first for my bachelor's because I thought, if their grad school's ranked this high, their undergrad program is going to be very good as well, which panned out very nicely. So yeah, that's sort of the big claim to fame. As far as the economics program, it's a primarily heterodox program. They don't put much credence, again, to more of the quantitative side, which I wish I would have known that would be something that I would be interested in. I actually stumbled across economics my senior year of undergrad after I had applied to all sorts of other grad programs. So being able to integrate the grad program I applied to with also a master's in economics was, priceless with what I had to work with. But yeah, University of Denver, it's a really great place. Mostly known for international studies, also business. They have good business and law school. Small liberal arts school other than that. So it's a nice place.
So master's in math or whatever, bachelor's in math, where are you getting that?
University of Maryland, Baltimore County is what I'm looking at right now. It's about 15 minutes away from where I'm going to live. And they're actually the only university, well, it says on their website, they're the only university in Maryland that offers a Bachelor of Science in Statistics. So that's probably what I'm going to go with and then do an applied math minor because they require that as well. So it'll be fun. Lots of work while going to school and working, but it's going to be okay.
That's cool. All right. Yeah. So what else? Any other questions?
Uh-huh.
How much do employers look at your academic work? Do they actually read anything that you've written to see how your communication skills are?
Yes.
Applied knowledge?
Yeah, that is a really important part, which I guess I completely forgot. Writing samples are extremely important. I think there's a general idea that our generation doesn't write well. Which from work with some people, that might be true, but not across the board. So yeah, they ask for writing samples. They look for applied work. What I did with a lot of my papers is I'd print out the empirical section to actually give them in the interview because it has, the quantitative analysis, more of the analysis, but also writing, and then would say that I could send them or email them the full paper if they requested. So writing is extremely important. Having them see that example is a crucial part for sure.
So to come to us again, so if you do produce something here in terms of rankings, it could be additional, you know, whatever you do in classes, and then if you do something here, it would be cool. Did you put our paper there?
I actually used my conference paper because it was nice to give them a writing sample and be like, and also I am presenting this at a conference in a month. That put a lot of weight to it. But also, you know, if I were to give them the AIER paper, I could say, this is what I wrote at my internship. I think a school paper, if it's written very well, is also extremely applicable to that. But being able to sort of have that added story, it's always good to always throw in a story if you can in almost every single question or, you know, thing you give them.
Yeah, so again, so obviously you have other writing samples, but see how you, again, the story or some kind of a thread, right? So I'm doing this research, so I did this for the class and I did this at the internship, but I'm doing this for my thesis or whatever. It's kind of all a nice package.
Yes.
And then you have more than one paper or one angle to show, this is my class work, this is my, you know, practical work, this is my whatever. So.
Yeah, and I think that trend is really important. Being able to sort of have that whole line of things that you've done working towards one common goal or one common industry or field. That's definitely what I did, and it worked out pretty well. I don't know.
All right, other questions? Yeah, so that's it. So we're at the Laurel, just walk around campus, I guess, to lunch.
Yeah.
All right, okay then. So thank you, Laurel, for coming back.
Thank you.